You have tuned into the BearDown Corner with your host, Sergeant Julio. Hey everybody, this is the BearDown Corner. I'm Sergeant Julio. We got your NFL this week. All right, so what we came to find out was former NFL running back CJ2K has recently come out after his most recent diagnosis with ALS. And honestly, after seeing this man who's only in his early 40s, literally talking to like one of those supercomputer things, having to speak for him because it's already crippled him that much, man, for what was a great player for the Tennessee Titans, a star for the NFL, this man was a hell of a running back. So our hearts and condolences go to this sir as he battles for the fight of his life. In other news, Brandon Ayuk is once again being a little bitch. So long story short, he blames his former agent for all of this crap going on. He went on to go and do like a 3 to 4 minute Instagram video or whatever the hell platform it was on. Either way, he goes on to basically bitch and moan and whine about it, on how he had the same agent as John Lynch and he didn't feel comfortable that after he fired him, he called his wife, which I agree with, but I don't know. Just there's more to the story than the shit that he went on to talk about in his video on YouTube. So either way, he's not going to be a 49er. He's already said he won't be a 49er. He's lauded to try and become a Washington Commander so he can be reunited with Jaden Daniels. Do I think it'll happen? Maybe eventually. But if I'm the 49ers, which I think the way they're going about it right now, motherfucker, we got you under contract. You're going to sit on the bench until we say otherwise. And honestly, I agree with that. I think they should hold that motherfucker down and hold him to his obligation and keep him honored to his contract. Bunch of childish bullshit. In other news, man, like the stories are just here. Teron Arnold, former first-round pick, cornerback DB of the Detroit Lions, has been released. And not for what you think. So I was shocked when I seen and read the story. He basically orchestrated a group of people. I think it was like 6 to 10 is what they kind of predicted in the end all of it. They rounded up these 3 people in Florida, basically pistol whipped the shit out of them and beat their ass to try and be like, hey, you stole money from him. And because I guess $100,000 cash, a bunch of like TVs, shit like that, all went missing recently in one of his homes. So this guy orchestrates and it's younger kids too. There's a 19-year-old involved in this, but they basically orchestrated where they had him on the phone and he's giving the orders of like, yeah, I think it's bullshit that you didn't take my money. And then he had them beat them again. Like, this dude's going away. He's going away. He got nailed on I think it was $1 million bail release, but his life's over. He fucked himself, which is sad, which is really sad because honestly, he was a bright young star for that Detroit defense. In other news, recent signings include Renton Strange of the Jacksonville Jaguars got a 3-year extension at $48 million to keep him in and as your long-term tight end starter. And Kyle Pitts reached an agreement on an extension from his franchise tag with the Atlanta Falcons. He is now signed up for 3 more years at $54 million. And honestly, if it's the whole slow progression to get the end goal, Pitts is on the right path. He had a hell of a year last year with abysmal quarterback play, and it's all retrospect. Good things could be to come for this tight end. Now, let's dive into State of the Division, Part 6, I believe. We got Part 6 now? Where's our notes to show how many things we're on now? This week, anyway. We are on the AFC South. Sorry, no, this is number 7 of 8. We got one more week to go after this, and it's the NFC North. But this week, we got the AFC South. So let's break it down. Jacksonville, we just mentioned. They signed their tight end, Brenton Strange, to a contract extension this offseason. They also signed Chris Rodriguez, who used to play for the Washington Commanders, on a 2-year deal, $10 million. He was brought in to replace Travis Etienne, of the running back who is now in New Orleans and probably looking to replace Alvin Kamara. But anyway, it's looking like Rodriguez is kind of the front runner to probably compete with Brandon Tootin at running back for this team. Now, keep in mind, Jacksonville has a very tight cap right now. I think they're only like 8 or 9 mil under the cap. They couldn't really re-sign Devin Lloyd and Travis Etienne. So, you know what? You take the cheaper option and you keep pushing forward, right? That's all you can do. They got lots of young talent on there. They brought in, I think it was a dozen undrafted free agents I read. They had over 9 draft picks, and they signed a few, not over the top, but enough to replace what you lost, right? They picked up some more linebackers in free agency. They gave a extension to their Monteric Brown, DB, to a 3-year, $33 million extension. He was the leading defensive blocked passes for this team last year. So, you know what? At 11 mil, that's going to soon start entering interceptions. And then we'll really see this guy get a payday in a few years if his progression takes its next step. But keep in mind, they can afford that also in the way because they got Travis Hunter who can play DB. And there's been all the talk about how he's going to play more defense this year than offense. So I guess at the end of the day, you got to look at, maybe this is all just part of their plan, right? Like, they signed edge rusher Josh Ouse, to a 1-year deal. They had no first-round pick this year because of trading last season. Dennis Gordek was brought in on a 2-year deal to probably kind of fill and help with the loss of Devin Lloyd. So you know what? Jacksonville, they have a good enough team, and Liam Cohn has this team going in the right way. They very well can compete for the AFC South again this year. I don't see why not. Yeah, their cap struck in. They lost some stars this offseason, but they're going to rebuild, right? You're going to have a more comfortable Trevor Lawrence in a second year of Liam Cohn's system. You're going to have a lot of guys wanting to step up and take their opportunity. If you know what, honestly, I wouldn't sleep on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'd take them as like a division pick. Honestly, this division could be anyone's game. Even Tennessee. I honestly think that in all of the NFL, when it comes down to, who's going to wind up the winner, I know Houston has the last few years because of just how everything's panned out. But I really think Jacksonville can repeat as AFC South champs. They have all the tools in the making. Trevor Lawrence has matured, and now he's taken the next step in Cohen's system. They can compete this year. Why not? There's plenty of other teams that can do the same as well, right? Like the next team on our list, the Indianapolis Colts. So the thing about the Colts that I find interesting is, so they didn't enter with first-round picks this year in the draft. They ended up having to re-sign, though, Daniel Jones to a 2-year, $88 million deal. And wide receiver Alex Pierce got an extension of 4 at 116. So when you let the losses of, you traded Michael Pittman, you traded Zari Franklin, you traded Brendan Smith, wide receiver, linebacker, offensive tackle, and then you lost both your defensive ends to free agency in Kavonte Pay and Samson Ebukam. Like, the moves they made puts them right in position to be right where they were last year. Really. I think the loss of Michael Pittman good receiver for sure. Pittsburgh should be very happy. They signed him to an extension after the trade. But Alec Pierce is waiting in the wings to take over the number 1 slot. Josh Downs is going to be your number 2 receiver, and he's developing very nice as a former 3rd-round pick. Let's not forget to mention Jonathan Taylor at running back. Like, you got backups that are ready to take the next leap. This team isn't in the worst position. Yeah, they gave up some first-round draft picks to get Sauce Gardner last year, but that's Sauce Gardner. We're talking about an all-pro who's only 24, by the way, not 25. He made that very clear at a press conference earlier, where apparently he's still listed as 2000, but he's actually born in 2001 or some shit. I don't know. He made it was a whole joke and shit about it. But anyway, regardless, this team's just fine. All right, they know who their quarterback is. They signed Ardeen, and you know what? They let all those guys go. They brought in new guys to fill their place. Ardeen Keene, defensive end. Michael Clemens, 3 years, $17 million. He's been around the league enough times. Derek Nottie up the middle. Jerry Tillery up the middle. And you still got Jonathan Owens, former Chicago Bear, by the way, at safety, to help with the loss of the guys that they did in free agency and trades. You know what? The Colts can just as easy walk away with the AFC South. Offensively, as long as Daniel Jones stays healthy, the sky's the limit for this team. They were 8-2 prior to him getting injured and out, and then it just went downhill from there. You had the whole Phillip Rivers come back. You had them go. They probably would have been AFC South champs last season. I'll just say it like that. Houston came back miraculously at the end of last year. Jacksonville won the division, taking care of business. But I really think the Colts would have won if Daniel Jones would have stayed healthy the last, 7 games last year. Right? I like how the Colts, they rebuilt, they retooled. The Titans, on the other hand, are the only team in this division to have hired a new head coach after releasing Mike Munchak last year. So Robert Saleh comes in after being a former head coach of the New York Jets and back as a defensive coordinator as the 49ers. Gets another chance to be the bench boss. Well, when you have 31-player turnaround, things have to happen. So what do? Well, they give Calvin Ridley some help at wide receiver with Wan'Dale Robinson coming in on a 4-year, $70 million contract. And they go and draft one of the best receivers in this year's draft, Carnell Tate, Ohio State. And then they pick up 31st overall, Keldry Falk, edge rusher, Auburn. I don't have all the names of everything that they did because honestly, I looked over it. A lot of it was replacement pieces, getting younger at different positions, molding the team in Saleh's vision. Because when you trade away former second-round pick, where was it? Oh, yeah. They traded their former defensive tackle for Jermaine John II. And we're talking about a guy who made the Pro Bowl last year to gain an extra edge rusher. Honestly, it's right up the alley. They went and signed and brought back with familiarity John Franklin Myers, who spent time with Saleh, by the way, in San Francisco, in New York. So now he's in Tennessee. This man has a vision, and as long as they can get the offense clicking and Cam Ward can develop as a quarterback, there's no reason the Titans, I don't think, could honestly compete this year. They might be young, a little inexperienced, but they're on the right track. Saleh's a good coach. And, yeah, I think this is his opportunity to redeem himself from his previous stint. And then we wrap it up with the final team in this division, Houston. Man, Houston, what can we say about you? Let's see here. The fact that you've re-signed your core in the last few years, you're tight as hell up against the cap, and you still somehow to keep making these moves. They re-signed Jaime Fairbairn to be the tied highest kicker in the league with Brandon Aubrey at $7 million a season. He got 4 years on that extension. They re-signed Ed Ingram. They went and picked up Wyatt Teller after he got released from the Browns. Instant starter there on the O-line, right? They drafted Kaylon Rutledge, offensive guard. So they got younger. They filled a couple pieces. 4th year now for CJ Stroud. So I just don't like what I see from him at times, though. Defensively, I have no worries about this team. They're gonna dominate just fine. But I fear for the offense this season. They went and got David Montgomery in a trade. Running back solution should be solved, right? His tire on the treads aren't completely worn out after 4 seasons in Detroit and 4 years in Chicago. I don't know. Houston's hard to read. That defense won them 11 games last year. Because you had times where Davis Mills, not CJ Stroud, Davis Mills, led this team to wins because they kept it such a low-scoring game. Jaime Fairbairn, they'd move the ball enough, kick the field goal. Move it enough, kick the field goal. This defense can win them games. Their kicker can win them games. Can the offense get back to being explosive? That's my question for the Houston Texans. If Montgomery works out in the capacity that he can be as a starter, Nico Collins I got no worries about. They drafted a tight end in the 2nd round in Mencken Klein. So he's going to compete with Dalton Schultz, or at least, learn from him. Is CJ Stroud your guy? Because honestly, I don't know. I have questions about him. So let's see if he proves us wrong this year. I honestly think Houston will probably be a wild card team again, or in that capacity of competing. Division-wise, honestly, I'd put it between the Colts and the Jaguars this year. But you know what, though? That's going to be it for today. I'm Sergeant Holio. This has been the BearDown Corner. Catch us live every Tuesday at 6 o'clock General Mountain, 8 o'clock Eastern. Be safe. Take care. Watch us on YouTube. And we'll catch you here next week on the BearDown Corner.